see them. So I hope this is good. So I found this online, and like I said, if you like, anybody who likes this video will be entered in to win the zipper pouch. I'll send it to you. I'll put it in the mail this weekend. So a couple things that you need to do this project is you need 2 pieces of fabric that are 10 by 7.5 for the outside of the zipper pouch. You need 2 pieces of fabric that are 10 by 7.5 for the inside of the pouch. You need 1 piece that's 2 1/4 by 7, and these are going to be the little zipper tabs on the side. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen them before, on the ends of the zipper when you have a purse and stuff like that. So that's what that's going to be for. If you don't have a heavyweight fabric, you definitely want interfacing, like this thin stuff with glue on it. But this fabric is actually kind of feels a little bit like denim, so I don't think I actually need the interfacing for that. So I'm not going to actually put that on there. The other thing that I find to be helpful is this Wonder Tape. This is great when doing zippers because you basically stick it down on the fabric and then the zipper stays in place so you don't have to use pins, and it helps out a lot. So I'm actually going to start by putting some of that on my lining. So the black is going to be my lining, and the white one, the white floral, is going to be my outside. So when you do this, you need a zipper. They said 14 inches, but you are going to cut the ends off. So I don't think I had a 14-inch zipper, but I had a 12-inch one, and so that's going to be fine. So just a regular zipper. So with my lining, right side up, if you have a right side, this doesn't really have a right side. I'm going to take my zipper, and I put the zipper tape on there. So I'm going to put my zipper centered on that zipper tape. So as long, or on the Wonder Tape. So as long as your zipper is longer than the 10-inch side, I think it'll be good. Okay, so you can see it's stuck on there. The Wonder Tape works wonders. So now I'm actually going to put another piece of Wonder Tape on top, because now I need to put my other piece of fabric and sandwich my zipper between the two. So I'm going to put another piece of zipper tape on there, you can see, and then I'm going to take the paper off. When I first was doing zippers and always used pins, it wasn't that the projects didn't turn out, but this has been an absolute saving grace when it comes to zippers, because it really does help. Okay, so sticky side is up, and then I'm going to take my floral outside pattern, and I'm going to center it on top, and I'm going to push it down. And so when you look at it, it's black fabric, zipper, white fabric, right sides are together with the zipper pull tab facing the outside fabric, whatever you want your outside to be. Now we would be ready to sew, but the way they have you putting this together, we don't want to sew all the way to the ends. So they said in the directions from the end, and I'll show you this, I'll hold it up in a second, we need to mark 3/8 of an inch in from the edge, and that's where we're going to stop doing the sewing here, because we're going to have to have some space to put those little zipper tabs in. Okay, so it's from there to there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that. The other thing I'm going to do, and usually when I'm sewing, I try to combine steps so I don't have to get up as much. So I'm also going to take my rectangle, and I'm going to fold it in half so it's long and skinny, and I'm going to sew along that so I can turn it as well. Okay, so let's come over here to the machine again. Sorry, I apologize for having to do this myself. Hopefully we'll get a decent view on there. So when I sew zippers, I do usually put the zipper foot on, and it does, because it does allow you to sew a little closer. So this is the zipper foot, so instead of the needle being in the middle of the foot, it's the left or right, and then there's grooves underneath here that the zipper teeth actually go right under. So I'm going to take my regular presser foot off, and I'm going to put my zipper foot to the right because my zipper is going to be to the left. And I'm going to put my needle in the center position. So when I start sewing this, I'm going to start here. I'm going to back stitch to the purple. I'm going to stitch all the way to my other purple and then back stitch again. So again, I'm going to put it in here, back stitch to my purple mark, forward stitch, and I'm using the edge of the presser foot to basically sew straight. So I have my fabric lined up with the edge. So when I get to the end, I'm going to go slow, and then once I'm at the purple, back stitch. Okay, so you can see my gray stitching there. I sewed, I back stitched at both the beginning and the end. So you know you did this right. Whoops. If you open it up and you have your zipper between the edges with the pull tab up on the facing up with your lining, with your outside. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to do this at the same time while I'm sitting here. So I'm going to take my zipper tabs and I'm going to fold it in half so it's long and skinny. And I'm just going to leave my zipper foot in there for the time being because I don't want to change it. I don't really need it in right now. And this is going to be sewed at 3/8. So you're going to sew, make sure you back stitch at the beginning and end. Okay. And we'll be turning that in a little bit. So it looks like that. So now we need to come back over to our table. And let me move this up a little bit again. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is now I have to sandwich the other side of the zipper in there. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. So I'm going to take my black piece of fabric, which is my lining. I'm going to lay that down on the table. You might want to iron it when you begin. And if you do use interfacing, you would be ironing it anyways. I'm going to take my Wonder Tape, put it along the edge. So we're basically repeating what we did at the beginning. So I'll cut that off, push it down, take off the tape, the paper, so now you can see that. And now I'm going to take my fabric with my zipper attached, and I'm going to pull both of these down so that the zipper's free, and then I'm going to place the zipper down on the fabric. And when I do this, I'll show you in a second. When I do this, you'll know you have it lined up correctly if all your sides are even with each other. So my two black pieces and my white piece are even with each other here, and then same on this other side. So then I'm going to put another piece of Wonder Tape on top of the zipper. And again, this is just great because whenever you don't have to use pins, it just helps a lot. Some people like to use these Wonder Clips. I'm not a big fan of the Wonder Clips though, so I would prefer to use pins if I need them, but this really helps out. So now I have my Wonder Tape, my sticky stuff there. And now I'm going to take my second outside piece and put it face down, lining up the edges. And I'm going to push down so that the Wonder Tape works good. And now I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch from each end of the fabric. So again, it's exactly the same thing as the last time. Okay, so I have my outside fabric. My zipper pull tab is face up. My black is on the other side. And then I have 3/8 in marked in on each side so that I know where to start and stop. So we're going to come back over here to the machine and we're going to do the same thing. Yeah. Okay. So because this isn't a super big thing, I don't have to switch my zipper foot because, again, my zipper's on the same side. So if my zipper foot was on the other side, I could turn this around and do it. Just have it facing that. Okay, so again, I'm going to back stitch at the beginning until I get back to my, whoops, my pull tab is in the way. Hold on. Okay, so then I'm going to stitch forward. And then I'm going to go until I get to my pink mark or purple mark. And then I'm going to back stitch a few stitches. So again, I stitch from here to here, which is my purple marks, and make sure I back stitched each one. Okay, so now we have to come over here and we have to press it. So what you want to do is you want to open it up so that your zipper is in the middle. And both of your pieces of fabric are to the side. I'm just going to take my iron and I'm going to go back and forth and make sure that nothing's caught in there. I'm going to flip it over. Again, I'm going to open my black or lining fabrics. And I'm going to press that as well. So sometimes I like to just go back and forth real quick so that that opens. So at this point, before you go any further, you do want to make sure that you can actually unzip your zipper without any of the fabric getting stuck in there. Because if you need to fix it, now would be the time. So you undo it, make sure it works. That looks good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some top stitching along the edges of the zipper. So let me look real quick because I think we have to stop 3/8 from the edge again with the top stitching. Yes, okay, so when we do this part, same thing, we can't go all the way to the end of this, we have to stay 3/8 in from the edge. So I'm gonna, again, take my pen and I'm gonna mark 3/8 of an inch. And this marker will come out with steam or water. It will also come out with air after a couple days. Okay, so I got that marked. So now I'm going to top stitch along here. So there's something called an edge foot that I'm going to use for this because it'll allow the fabric to sit right on it. I think this one should be good. Let me just double check it real quick. Yes, this will be perfect. Okay, so let me just show you the bottom of the foot. So this is presser foot G for me. There is a little thing that sticks down here. I'm going to line that up with the zipper teeth, and that'll help me to sew straight the whole time I'm doing this. Okay, so that's called the edge foot. And again, I'm going to back stitch to the purple mark, and then I'm going to sew forward, and then I'm going to back stitch when I get to the end. So the edge foot just sits right up along the zipper teeth. So it allows you to do this without sewing crooked at all. And the other thing is you just want to make sure, again, you pull your fabrics a little bit away so that none of it gets caught in there. Okay, so we're going to go until we get to the 3/8 mark. Cut your threads. So you can see I sewed there, so the edge foot helped out a lot to make sure it was staying there. So I'm going to flip it around, do it the same way I did the other side. So again, I just want that bottom edge part to be up against the teeth. This edge foot is actually also really nice when you don't have a serger, because it allows you to zigzag right over the edge. And I believe it can even roll it under and stuff. And I hope whoever wins this likes red, black, and white. I don't have a huge selection of wovens right now because I'm using most of them for mass still. Okay, so now I'm going to cut that. And there you can see the stitching. I have a cover stitch machine, which I could use for this part also, which would make it look super nice, but I know a lot of people don't have that, so I wouldn't show an option without it. Okay, so I believe this next part is, oh no, the next part's not too bad, but the part after that is a little tricky. So what you're going to do now is you're going to take your pieces so that your 2 lining pieces are together and your 2 outside pieces are together. The lining pieces, we want this to have all finished edges. So this is the part where we have to leave an opening so that we can pull the whole bag through this opening at the end. Okay, so you can mark it with something, if like a pen if you want. But the other thing you can do is just, these aren't going to move much. So I'm just going to put 2 pins in, and I know I'm not going to sew between those 2 pins. Just don't make it too small because this fabric is a little stiff, plus you have the zipper and things like that. Now this side over here, I'm going to sew the whole side because this is the outside of the bag and we don't want to leave a hole on this side. So I'm just going to put a couple pins in here just to hold it in place, but you actually don't even need pins. Like I said, this isn't going to really move too much on you. Okay, and everything is pretty much 3/8 on this. So we're going to come over here, and now I have to switch back to my regular presser foot. And everything can pretty much be done with the regular presser foot. The only thing is if you use the regular presser foot with the zipper part, you may not be able to sew close enough to the teeth. So that's the only part I would recommend. I'm using a zipper foot. The rest, you can get away without it. So my needle came unthreaded, so I just had to rethread that. Okay, so when my needle's in the center position, if I'm lined up with the edge of the presser foot, if my fabric's in line there, that is 3/8. So I need to make sure that I'm back stitching at the beginning. And then I'm going to sew all the way to my other end. And back stitch. On this, my lining pieces, I'm going to sew from the end to the pin and back stitch. And then I'm going to sew a little bit before the pin, go back to the pin and back stitch on this side. Again, all at 3/8. And it probably wouldn't hurt to leave your opening a little bit bigger rather than smaller, because you can end up busting your stitches if you're trying to pull something through and it's too small of an opening. So I actually even made mine just a little bit bigger. Okay, so there's what the black side looks like, my lining. That's what the outside looks like. And you can trim your threads. Okay, so I need to work on my zipper pull tabs because that's the next part. So with this, I'm going to take a safety pin. People have bodkins and stuff, but I personally think a safety pin is the easiest way to do this. So you put the safety pin in about a ½ inch from the cut edge on the fold. Then you take the pin, you push it down in, and then basically you pull up on all these wrinkles so that the end that's attached to the safety pin goes down inside the tube. So this isn't very long, and they have you do this all in one piece, and we're actually going to be cutting it in half. So this just takes a little bit less time if you do it all in one piece than trying to do it in two separate pieces. Usually once you get the end out, the rest of it usually turns pretty easy. Okay, so that's turned right side out. So now I need to press it flat, and then we're going to top stitch it and then attach it. So a lot of people, when they iron this, will iron with the seam on the end. I like to iron it with the seam down the middle. So I try to press it flat like that. And then we can hide that seam on the inside when you see how I'm going to fold it in a minute. Steam can sometimes help with that. Okay, so now I'm going to top stitch on each side. Top stitching is pretty close to the edge. It's about 1/8 of an inch away from each end. So I'm going to be top stitching along the fold. So I'm actually going to leave my needle in the center, and then there's a mark that's 1/8 of an inch mark. So I'm having the edge of it matched up with that 1/8 of an inch mark. Okay, so do one side. See there? And then I'm going to do the other side. Sometimes when you're sewing a teeny tiny thing and you're right on the edge, sometimes you have to guide it a little bit more in the machine. And that seam on the inside, this fabric is kind of thick, so that seam on the inside is also causing it to move a little bit. And you don't actually have to back stitch when you do this, because you're going to be sewing over the ends. Okay, so we have that. So now we're going to cut it in half. So I have a ruler on my cutting mat here. Where's my, okay, so I'm going to cut it at 3.5 inches. This, by the way, is what I cut my finger with. Okay, then you're going to take this piece and you're going to fold in half. So I would pick the side that looks the best. So I would say this side looks the best, and I would have that side touching the top of the zipper. So this is the part that's confusing. So I'm going to look at my example on here just to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Okay, so we got to come back over here to the ironing board. And you're going to open this up so that your zipper is in the middle, and so that my seam that I sewed when I sewed the bottom is centered over the teeth. So I'm going to press this open. Sometimes if you press it to one side, it'll put a crease in it. Then you can open it up. And again, I want to make sure that this is centered over my zipper teeth, because that's where it'll be at the end. The seam is going to be on the center bottom of the bag.
Mom said that she liked her safety pin idea.
Huh?
She said that you liked her.
Who?
Mom said that you liked that she liked the safety.
So now I'm going to do the same thing with the black side. So I'm going to make sure that my seam is right centered over the zipper. And I'm going to press it once to one side. And again, we have this hole here that we'll have to press even though there's no stitching there. Okay, so I'm going to open that. And then the middle here, you just have to make sure that it's pressed open 3/8 of an inch. I might come back to that after I do this side. This fabric's a little bit thicker, so it doesn't press as nice as just a basic quilting cotton. And you will be closing this hole up at the end. So press that open and then fix this side. Okay, so that should be fine for right now. Okay, so this is the part that I definitely need to look at the picture because I have never done this before. And it seemed a little confusing, so if it's confusing to me, I feel like I need to do a good job explaining it. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lift up the outer piece, and then we're going to place our zipper tab, again with the better side touching the zipper. Okay, and I have to actually open the side that the zipper opens. I do actually need to open that before I do this. Otherwise, you're gonna sew your zipper shut and then you won't be able to use it. So I'm gonna take my pin and I'm going to this is super thick. I don't think I'm actually even going to be able to pin this. I'm going to have to sew it. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew along. We're going to sew along here. So we're going to sandwich that pull tab in between. But now I have to flip it over because I've got to move my black lining fabric out of the way. So I have it upside down. So I'm going to take my black lining and I'm going to pull it back. Yeah, pull it back like this so it doesn't get caught in there at all. So I'm going to pull back that Wonder Tape I have on there. So our outside fabric is on the bottom, and then we have our pull tab in between it. And now I'm just trying to pull back all this black lining fabric so it's out of the way, so that when I do my next step and sew this, I'm only sewing the outside. Okay, so I'm going to sew here, across, and over to here. When you do this, you need to make sure you're sewing at 3/8, and it is okay to sew over your zipper teeth if they are plastic. If they're not plastic, you're going to break your needle when you go over that. So I'm going to put a pin on each side of the zipper like this, so that, whoops, so on this side the zipper stays close together. Okay, now I'm going to turn it and I'm going to do the same exact thing. So I'm going to take my pull tab, pick the side that looks better and have that touching the zipper. So sandwich it in there, and then I'm going to pull back on the black so it's completely out of the way, and then put a pin back here to hold it. So just keep it out of the way. Okay, and again I'm going to put a pin on each side of the zipper in the fabric so it just holds it in place when I'm sewing this. Okay, and I'm going to sew across here. Again, you can sew across the teeth as long as they aren't metal. If they are metal, you have to sew up until the teeth. Then you have to restart and sew on the other side of the teeth, and then you have to cut it. So again, we're going to do this at 3/8. Oops. Needle came unthreaded again. Needle threader is a luxury if you ever can have one. Okay, so I'm going to back stitch. And again, when I get close to here is where I want to be careful, making sure that I don't catch any of the black in this. Okay, so all my black is off to the side, pulled back. And just be careful when you're going over the teeth. This is pretty thick because you have a lot of layers here. You have the pull tab, you have the this big hump where the black fabric is, plus you have the zipper, plus you have the white fabric as well. Okay, now that pushed me off to the side a little bit, so what I'm going to do is take the needle out. I'm going to go back because it's going to be super loose, and I'm going to redo, if it'll let me. I actually might turn it over and go from the other end. I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn it over, go from the end into the middle, and that'll just make sure the sewing's straight and secure because it got, like I said, super thick, and so it's not going to be super secure. Okay, so I sewed across that part, and I cut a teeny tiny bit of the black part, but that's okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing over this side. I'm going to take one little stitch out of this black part. Otherwise, I'm going to sew over it. Now, if you don't really care about your raw edges showing, you don't have to go to all this work to do everything. But all these steps that you're doing here are basically so that you can turn it right side out and not have any of your seam showing. So again, just pull everything to the back. I want my zipper teeth to be sitting on top of each other. It's also a good idea to take out your pins, especially because I'm not really paying attention to where the pins are because I'm trying to make sure everything else is good. So I would hate, you know, to hit the pin. The other thing is it might be a good idea to back stitch right where the zipper teeth are just for some more stabilizing there. I may go back on the other side and do an extra set of stitching there where the zipper is, because when you're pulling the pull tab, you're going to put some pressure on there. So again, I sewed there, and then I'm going to go back to this part to the middle on the other side, and I'm just going to stitch over top of this part again, just again to reinforce where that zipper is. And then I'm going to go over to this side and do the same thing. You by all means don't have to do this part, but again, if you're taking the time to make something, you don't want it to fall apart on you. And since I'm sending this to someone else, I definitely don't want it falling apart. Okay, needle came unthreaded again. Sometimes when I do super thick things, my needle comes unthreaded. So now we're going to do the same thing with the black, but the black should be a lot easier because the black doesn't actually have the zipper attached to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually cut the extra part of the zipper off. This is why I'm a little confused why they insisted in the directions that you need a 14-inch zipper when I have a 12-inch and still plenty to cut off. Again, if you have metal teeth, you will ruin your scissors when you cut across it. So if you have questions on how to do that, I can always help you with it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with the black section, trying not to catch the white part in there. It's going to be a little thicker because the zipper is at that point. So I just need to make sure that the zipper's out of the way. Let me double check too and make sure they don't want us sewing over that. Okay, yeah, they don't want us sewing over the black. So this part's going to be kind of hard because you're going to have to pull the zipper part back to not catch it in there and still catch our black part at the same time. So what I'm going to do for this one to make my life a little easier is I'm actually going to take the zipper foot and use that because that'll let it get close to the zipper and won't push it off to the side. Okay, so I'm just going to pull my white fabric back. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning. And then when I get to this middle part where the zipper is, I'm just going to try and pull it back so that I don't catch it, but I also don't want a hole where the lining is going to be. So this part's probably the trickiest. So now I'm going to go and do the other side because it was going to get caught in there. To be honest, if I was doing this, again, this is the first time I have done this, I would have probably not sewed the zipper all the way to 3/8 if that's what I'm sewing here, because it's really hard to get close with the zipper. So now I'm going to have to figure out how to get this out of the way. So if I was doing this again, I probably would have sewed up to 4/8 from the edge at that beginning, and then did 3/8 here, and that probably would have helped. So this is definitely a little bit of a struggle. May have to go back and stitch a little bit of this by hand because it just does not want to let me in here. Needle came unthreaded again. Yeah, this part's a little difficult. But this is the lining, so that's the good news. If anything goes wrong with it, it'll still be okay at the end. If it was a different story. Okay, finally. That one's not perfect, but I got sewn across there. Okay, so now I have to do the same thing on the other side. So again, I got to sew across my black fabric here, trying not to catch my white fabric in it. Is it that boring? Raylan's back there yawning.
I'm just tired.
Again, and I'm just trying to make sure that this outside is out of the way. So now I'm going to restart. I actually feel like it might be easier if you even use a shorter zipper. Okay, so now let me just do this last little part in here. Okay, so now that we have that done, now what we need to do is make our corners square. So, if you've ever seen square corners on anything, sometimes, even if you watch my tote bag demonstration, I did my corners where I cut them out. This one, we're going to do the corners when they're in a point and closed. So what I'm trying to do is unzip my zipper a little bit on the inside, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to turn it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each corner and make it a point, and then we're going to sew across that point. So the one thing that you need to make sure that you do is make sure that that stitching is in the center, or else you'll have a corner that looks a little uneven. So we're going to come over here, and let me get my one ruler that's going to help. So we need to do 1 1/4 from the point. So you're going to come down 1 1/4, and on the black part I'm going to draw with a white marker so that I can actually see it. So if you can see there how I did that, and then I'm going to put one pin in there just to hold it. And then I'm going to do that with every other corner. So you can go in through your opening that's in the lining. Make sure you pull so that it's open all the way. So I'm using my ruler on my mat here, and I'm using this ruler to make sure that I'm drawing a straight line. So there's actually 8 of these that you're going to be sewing, and this is basically our last step besides closing the little opening. So I'm going to take a pin, put in there. Now I have 2 more black corners to do. So mark that one, and that's going to be our guide for sewing also. We're going to sew right across the corners. Okay, one last black corner, and then we have 4 of the white ones to do. Sometimes too you can use the ruler on your machine if you don't feel like marking it. So I got the 4 black corners marked, so now I'm going to do the same exact thing for the white pieces. So I'm going to open it up. Make sure it's completely open. Now these are the ones that matter because these are the ones that are going to see. So my lining isn't as important because no one sees that at all. It's going to be on the inside of the bag, but the outside corners people are going to definitely see. So I'm going to switch to my purple marker now because I'm not going to be able to see white on white. So when you measure whatever number you measure from the point down, the sewing across the item is going to be twice as wide. So if I'm sewing down 1 1/4 from the point, then the line I'm sewing across is actually going to be double that. So it's going to be 2 1/2. So if you're not really sure if you're straight down the middle, that's another thing that you can do to check, is when you go across here, you want to make sure that it's 1 1/4 to the seam and then 1 1/4 to the other side. So I can tell mine wasn't lined up very well because it was 2 different sizes. Although the seam allowance does make it look a little bit bigger on one side. Okay, so I have 2 more to do. We'll sew those. Then we sew our hole that we left in our lining once we turn it, and then our bag is complete. Okay, one more. So sometimes when you're new at sewing and you haven't really made a lot of stuff, sometimes it doesn't really make a ton of sense when you're trying to do certain steps. It may not make sense why you're doing certain things, but once you get the hang of sewing and you make things a bunch, you'll start to realize why you're doing things in the order that you're doing. And usually having all finished edges is one of those. Okay, so let me put my cap on my pen, put a pin here, and now I'm going to sew across all 8 corners. For this part, you definitely want to make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. And I have also put my regular presser foot back on. Okay, again, try not to sew over your pins. Okay, so there's one. You can always open up the seam allowance if you want, but it really in this case doesn't matter if it's to one side or the other. At the end you can trim them if you want, but since they're going to be hidden inside the bag, it doesn't really matter if they are kept there. So 2 more on the white piece. Sew it across there. Okay, so now I have all 4 corners of my white piece sewn. So now I'm going to go and sew the lining pieces, the black fabric. Okay, so I sewed across the black point. So across this one. And again, all of these, don't worry about threads hanging off because all of this is going to be completely hidden at the end. So usually, I usually trim my threads, but this has a thread cutter, so it cuts them pretty short. And I usually don't go back and retrim them unless my seams are going to be seen on the outside. Okay, now I have my last corner in my lining. So there's my last corner. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go in through the opening that you left and you're going to turn it. And you're going to push out the corners of the white one. So there's 4 corners we did, so you're just going to push them out. Okay, and so now we have to close the opening that's on the inside of the bag. So I could change this to black thread if I wanted to, but again, this is on the inside of the bag and no one's going to be seeing in there. So I'm just going to fold the edges into the side and I'm going to sew real close to the edge and close that opening. Back stitch at the beginning. You could also hand stitch this if you want, but again, you have to think about, are you going to actually see it? And you're not, because it's going to be on the inside. So if this was outside of the bag, I would say definitely hand stitch it. But since it's on the inside of the bag, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I close that. So now these threads I do want to trim because when you look in the bag, it will look you'll be able to see those. Okay, so now you're going to now push the black part inside of the white part and then push out the corners. Everything should be matched up on the inside of the bag. Okay, so you can see these are our zipper pull tabs that we put on each end. We have our zipper. You could press these corners if you want to, but you definitely don't need to. You could also press creases in this part if you want to. But that is basically our zipper pouch. So this would be a great bag for like makeup or jewelry. Whenever we all get back to traveling one day, it would be a good bag for that. So make sure you like this, and then I'll pick a winner tonight or tomorrow randomly about it with everybody that liked it. And hopefully one of you will be the winner and we'll be happy. So have a good night. See you later.